Senate at the time that I initially was appointed and then later was elected to the state Senate. And I was a teacher, yet I thought, looked around, and a number of lawyers at that time, more, I think, a larger percentage of lawyers at that time than there are now in the state legislature. So I thought, it might be helpful to have a little more credibility with my colleagues if I had a law degree. Career path was not one where I went directly to law school after college. I was one of those older students when I went to law school, though now that older student seemed like it was a very young person, but at the time I was 10 years older than the other students. Tough at times. I mean, I certainly was not part of the good old boy network, and many people that were serving the legislature at that time were. And so at times it was difficult. And people were cordial, they were nice, but you didn't always feel that you were part of the group that was getting together talking about legislation after hours or even in small groups during the day. I remember one time the president of the Senate came over and was going to talk to me, and I was really excited because I thought he was going to talk to me about legislation, and he came over to find out if I knew of any good babysitters in Topeka, because his wife was going to be coming to visit, and they had a child that was in kindergarten. And so he wanted to know if I had any names to suggest to him, and I was kind of crushed. That was why he wanted to talk to me. A very few number of women, and by the time I started law school, which was in 1981, there were a few more women at that point in time than there had been previously. I served in the legislature for 12 years, and so I was doing that as well as trying to practice law, and it was just a private practice doing a real general type of caseload, domestic cases, probate cases, did a little bit of low-level criminal cases. And I did that for a number of years, and then was selected to serve as Secretary of Revenue under Governor Finney's administration. And so I did that for 2 years, and at that time was when I applied, actually for the second time, to become a judge, and I was selected to be a judge at that point in time in '94. So it seemed like whatever I would have encountered as a judge, I probably had some experience in dealing with some of those types of issues in the legislature. So I think that was helpful. I had some very interesting cases. One that comes to mind was one that actually became a case that was presented on 48 Hours, the television show, and we had folks coming in to film from that production, and it was a 3-week trial, and they were here for the preliminary hearing and the 3-week trial and the sentencing and all of that. It was an interesting case. So obviously that was one that comes to mind, partly from my criminal assignment, probably the sentencing, because that's the part that really the judge has the decision on. I mean, if in a jury trial in a felony criminal case, the jurors make a determination as to whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. And the sentencing sometimes becomes very difficult. It's frustrating to me at times because our sentencing guidelines do give a lot of structure to the sentences that I need to impose or required to impose by law, and sometimes they don't always fit the fact situation and the crime that the defendant has been convicted of. For example, different defendants, particularly in a criminal case, will react differently depending on the judge's style, and not sure, and I guess I'd have to say probably our styles are different depending on our personalities and probably our gender as well. A few cases where I have had defendants come back after they've served time in prison and come back to have contact with me, and that has been a real rewarding time for me. I've not always even been here when they've been come back, but I got the word that they had come back and wanted to thank me.